Welcome to Hope Stories, where one secret can shatter a life or save it. Imagine waking up one morning believing you know your family, only to have a single revelation rip the ground out from beneath you. What would you sacrifice to protect the people you love most, even if it meant living with a truth too heavy to speak aloud? In today's story, we dive into the heart of that impossible choice, a battle between love and betrayal, forgiveness and rage. It's a journey that will make you question what it really means to be family and how far a parent's heart can stretch when faced with the unthinkable. Stay with us, because what happens next will stay with you long after the screen fades. And now, let's step into their world. The late afternoon sun slanted across downtown Chicago, throwing long amber streaks over cracked sidewalks and graffiti-stained brick walls. Ethan Miller tightened his grip on the steering wheel, cursing under his breath as traffic snarled to a halt. He hated cutting through this part of the city, where the scent of garbage clung to the air and shadows seemed to stretch farther than they should. Beside him, 5-year-old Alex kicked his legs in the booster seat, humming a tune from kindergarten, oblivious to his father's rising discomfort. When a delivery truck blocked the intersection, Ethan sighed and parked at the curb. That's when Alex's voice sliced through the hum of engines and city noise. "Dad," he whispered, pressing his face against the glass. "Those boys, they look just like me." Ethan followed his son's gaze and froze. On the sidewalk, curled together on a filthy mattress between two overflowing dumpsters, slept two boys about Alex's age. Their clothes were shredded, their bare feet raw and cracked. One had chestnut curls, the other darker skin and hair. But their faces, oval, delicate, with the same arched brows and that unmistakable cleft in the chin, might as well have been mirror images of his son. A cold shiver ran up Ethan's spine. "Come on, buddy, let's go," he muttered, forcing a casual tone as he unbuckled Alex. But his son slipped free with surprising strength and sprinted toward the boys. Heart-hammering, Ethan chased him through the crush of pedestrians, past a man selling knockoff watches and a woman yelling at no one in particular. He feared what Alex would see, feared what he himself already felt in his gut, that this was no coincidence. Alex knelt in the grime and reached for the boy's hands. The chestnut-haired one stirred, blinking open a pair of brilliant green eyes that stole Ethan's breath. They weren't just similar, they were identical to Alex's. As the boy scrambled upright and shielded his brother with a trembling arm, Ethan recognized that protective gesture. He had seen Alex do the same for smaller kids at school. Every detail, the way the boy bit his lower lip, the nervous scratch behind his ear, was achingly familiar. "What's your name?" Alex asked softly. "Luke," the boy rasped, voice hoarse with hunger. "This is Matt." Ethan's knees buckled. Luke and Matt. The names he and Patricia had whispered during sleepless nights when they dreamed of triplets but lost her in childbirth. Names he'd never told a soul after she died. His chest constricted, as though the city's weight pressed down on him. The boys admitted they'd been on the street 3 nights. Their Aunt Marissa had promised to return with food and clean clothes, but never did. Ethan's mind reeled. Marissa, Patricia's troubled sister, had vanished after the funeral. Now here were these living echoes of his wife's children, bearing the names they'd chosen in secret, abandoned like trash. It was terrifying. It was undeniable. As the boys devoured the cookies Alex pulled from his backpack, Ethan's pride warred with panic. The resemblance was too exact. The same almond-shaped eyes, even the same rhythm of blinking when thinking hard. Some force, cruel or divine, had brought them here. He couldn't walk away, yet some dark instinct warned that taking them home would shatter his carefully constructed life. And still Alex's small voice broke his resistance. "Dad, they're hungry. We can't leave them." That night, Ethan paced his glass-walled condo, watching the 3 boys sleep tangled together on the rug. For the first time in 5 years, Alex's face looked wholly content, as if some missing piece of him had finally been found. Ethan's phone buzzed with an unknown number. A police officer's clipped voice informed him that Marissa had been found dead in a seedy motel, overdose, maybe more. The walls seemed to tilt. Any hope of answers from her had died with her. An even more disturbing call came later from Dr. Henry Adams, the pediatrician who delivered Alex. His tone was urgent, almost panicked. There were inconsistencies in the old hospital files, things Ethan was never told about Patricia's labor. Words like genetic procedure and unauthorized implantation crackled down the line. Ethan's blood ran cold. Someone with money and influence had done something unimaginable the night his children were born, and the truth was far darker than abandonment. Standing at the window, the city lights glittering below, Ethan stared at the three identical profiles and felt a vow form like iron in his chest. Whatever secret his powerful family had buried, whatever twisted science had played with their lives, he would uncover it. But some secrets are protected by people who will do anything to keep them hidden. As Henry's warning echoed, Ethan, the boys might be in danger. He finally understood that finding Luke and Matt was only the beginning of a much more dangerous story. What would you do if you discovered strangers on the street who looked exactly like your child? Could love alone be enough to face the shocking truth about their origin? And as Ethan turns to confront his family's darkest secrets, one devastating revelation is waiting to upend everything he thought he knew. Ethan barely slept, haunted by Marissa's death and Dr. Adams's cryptic words. The morning sun painted his condo in pale light, but its warmth didn't reach him. Alex, Luke, and Matt sat cross-legged on the floor eating cereal, oblivious to the storm gathering above their heads. Their laughter, sweet and unguarded, stabbed at Ethan's heart with a strange mix of joy and dread. He wanted to freeze this moment forever, but deep down he knew fragile happiness never lasts. When Dr. Adams arrived unannounced, his face ashen, Ethan felt the ground shift again. The doctor didn't sit. He hovered near the door like a man ready to flee. "Ethan, what I'm about to say could ruin lives," he began, voice trembling. "The night Patricia gave birth, there were irregularities. Your mother authorized a clandestine procedure, 3 embryos, genetically edited. 1 implanted in Patricia, 2 implanted in a surrogate without your knowledge." Ethan's breath caught. His mother. He saw flashes of her icy smiles, her endless need for control, her obsession with legacy. "They told me it was to save Alex," Dr. Adams continued. "Patricia's pregnancy was risky. They wanted backups, perfect matches for stem cell therapy in case he was born ill." The words landed like bullets. Ethan staggered, visions of his wife screaming in labor colliding with the realization that she'd been a pawn in his family's schemes. Luke and Matt weren't some miracle of fate. They were products of a secret experiment, engineered and discarded when they weren't needed. He wanted to vomit. He wanted to tear the city apart brick by brick until someone answered for this. But the worst came when Dr. Adams hesitated and added, "Your mother is filing for custody. She claims the boys are biologically Miller's and belong in the family estate. She has resources, lawyers, influence. If she wins, you may lose all 3. A red haze clouded Ethan's vision. His mother, the same woman who orchestrated this madness, now wanted to take the boys like trophies. His chest burned with rage and fear. How could he protect them against a woman who had the courts and the media in her pocket? That night, as the city roared outside, Ethan watched the boys sleeping again. He noticed Luke twitching in his dreams, Matt whimpering softly. What had they endured on the streets? What scars were etched beneath their skin from being treated as less than human? He realized the fight ahead wasn't just legal, it was moral. To claim them, he'd have to expose his own family's darkest crimes. The cost could be catastrophic. Alex stirred and whispered half asleep, "You won't let them take us, right, Dad?" Ethan's heart cracked. He couldn't promise, not truthfully, but he knelt beside his son and whispered, "I'll burn the world before I let anyone hurt you." Even as he said it, a part of him feared his mother would strike first. A knock thundered at the door, jolting him upright. 2 men in tailored suits stood outside, holding envelopes stamped with his mother's legal insignia. The war had officially begun. What would you risk to protect the ones you love when the enemy is your own blood? As the legal battle begins and Ethan's mother reveals her ruthless hand, an even darker family secret waits to surface, threatening to destroy them all. Are you ready to uncover it? Ethan's hands trembled as he tore open the envelopes. Inside were legal documents coldly demanding custody of Luke and Matt, peppered with words like unfit guardian and abandonment. His mother's lawyers were painting him as reckless, emotionally unstable, even hinting that Alex had been endangered under his care. The audacity made his blood boil. But beneath the rage simmered something far more dangerous: fear that they might be right in the eyes of a court willing to bow to the Miller name. He remembered how easily his mother had bent the world before. She could charm senators with a smile and destroy rivals with a whisper. Fighting her would be like going to war against an empire. Yet it wasn't just her legal power that unsettled him. The next morning, Dr. Adams returned with an envelope of his own, Patricia's medical records. He hesitated before handing them over, eyes clouded with guilt. "There's something else you need to know," he said quietly. Ethan's heart pounded as he read the final page. Patricia had known. Buried in her handwriting, shaky but legible, was a consent form for the embryo procedure, signed the night before she went into labor. She had agreed to everything. The revelation knocked the air from his lungs. All these years, he'd imagined Patricia as a victim of his mother's control, but this suggested something far more complicated. Had she been coerced, or had she willingly participated in the lie? The foundation of his grief cracked. He'd built his anger on the belief that Patricia never wanted this, but now he wasn't sure who to blame. As if that weren't enough, Dr. Adams confessed he wasn't the only one with this information. "Your mother has these records. She'll use Patricia's signature to prove her case, to argue that Luke and Matt were always meant to be hers." Ethan's mind spun with betrayal and confusion. His wife's memory collided with his mother's manipulation until he couldn't tell where love ended and control began. That night, as the boys played with Lego bricks on the living room floor, Ethan stared at Patricia's handwriting. Was this her choice, or a desperate act under pressure? Did it even matter now? He'd spent years idolizing her, telling Alex bedtime stories about the kind of woman she was. But what if he'd been wrong? What if she'd made a choice he couldn't forgive? The ache of that thought hurt more than any court battle. He stood at the window, the city below buzzing with indifferent life, and felt the weight of an impossible decision pressing in. To win custody, he'd have to drag Patricia's name through the mud, expose the manipulation and coercion, even if it meant tarnishing the only memory Alex had of his mother. To protect his children, he might have to destroy the image of the woman he'd loved. As he wrestled with this truth, his phone buzzed again. A text message from an unknown number: "Stop fighting, or Alex will pay first." His stomach dropped. This wasn't just a legal war anymore. Someone was willing to hurt his son. The lines between family and enemy blurred completely, and Ethan knew the next move could cost him everything. Would you sacrifice the memory of someone you love to protect the living, even if it meant shattering your own heart? As threats turn deadly and Ethan faces an unthinkable moral choice, the next revelation will expose just how far his mother's reach truly extends. Are you ready for what's coming? Ethan's hands tightened around the phone until his knuckles turned white. The anonymous threat echoed in his skull like a ticking bomb. He'd expected his mother to fight dirty, but this felt different, too vicious, too personal. That night, he doubled the locks, kept the boys close, and barely blinked. Every shadow outside the window seemed to move with intent. Every passing car felt like a harbinger. Alex noticed his father's unease, crawling into his lap and whispering, "We'll be okay, right?" Ethan forced a smile, but his chest ached with the weight of his own uncertainty. The next morning, he drove to his mother's penthouse. Margaret Miller greeted him with her trademark composure, glass of scotch in hand, eyes sharp as razors. "You think I sent that text?" she asked before he could speak. "Don't insult me. I don't make threats. I make promises." Her words were ice, but her denial sounded genuine. Ethan couldn't decide which was worse, the thought of her ordering harm or the possibility that someone else wanted to hurt his son. When he demanded answers about Patricia's signature, her expression flickered for the briefest moment. "She came to me," Margaret admitted. She wanted security for the child she carried. She wanted a future where no one could take him from her, and she was willing to trade anything for it. The revelation gutted him. Patricia hadn't been coerced. She'd gone willingly into Margaret's web. He left the penthouse reeling, his wife's memory shifting again into something he could barely recognize. That night, back home, a stranger stood at his door, a gaunt man with haunted eyes, clutching an envelope. "I'm the surrogate," he said quietly. "I carried Luke and Matt, and you need to know what really happened." Inside the envelope were hospital photos Ethan had never seen, grainy and raw. 2 premature babies in incubators, nurses looking away as men in suits signed papers. "They weren't abandoned," the man continued. "Your mother sold them to cover debts. I bought them back years later. I've been looking for the right moment to tell you, but now they're in danger again." Ethan felt the world collapse under the weight of so many betrayals. Patricia's choice, his mother's cruelty, the stranger's confession, it all twisted into a storm inside him. He wanted to scream, to run, to protect the boys at all costs. But more than that, he wanted the truth, no matter how ugly. His moral compass spun wildly. How could he fight for his sons when every path led through a minefield of pain? And then, almost as an afterthought, the surrogate whispered one last bombshell. "Your mother isn't working alone. There's someone else who wants them back. Someone who thinks the boys belong to him." Ethan's heart stopped. The danger wasn't just legal or familial. It was something darker and more unpredictable. The threat on his phone suddenly felt very real. What would you do if every truth you uncovered about your family cut deeper than the lies? Could you still protect those you love? As Ethan faces enemies on all sides and a shadowy figure emerges with a claim on his children, the storm is far from over. Are you ready to witness the reckoning? Ethan stood in the kitchen long after the boys had gone to bed. The stranger's envelope splayed open on the counter like a crime scene. His hands trembled as he stared at the grainy photographs, each image forcing him to question everything he thought he knew. Patricia's wide-eyed smile in the old maternity photo, had it masked fear or complicity? And his mother, signing documents while her diamond rings glinted under the fluorescent hospital lights. Light had looked almost bored. The surrogate's revelation gnawed at him. But what crushed him most was the final claim. Someone else wanted his sons back. That night he sat in the dark with a glass of bourbon, waiting for the inevitable. When the knock came, it wasn't violent. It was almost polite. Ethan opened the door to find a man in a tailored coat, his face unsettlingly familiar. "My name is Victor Hale," he said smoothly, "and you have something of mine." Behind him, 2 men lingered in the shadows. Ethan's gut clenched. "The boys aren't yours," he spat. Victor's smile didn't falter. "Biology says otherwise. Patricia and I, we were together before she married you. She never told you, did she? One of those boys carries my blood." The room spun. Ethan's world collapsed again. He wanted to call it a lie, another manipulation, but Victor produced a folded sheet of paper, a DNA report. The name Hale appeared beside one of the twins. Ethan couldn't breathe. His love for Alex and Luke had never hinged on biology, but this revelation carved a fissure deep inside him. Patricia had sworn her loyalty, her love. Had she been protecting him or deceiving him all along? Victor leaned closer, his voice low and venomous. "I don't want money. I want my son, and I have the means to take him." Ethan's rage and fear coiled tight, but beneath it all, a gnawing doubt took root. If Victor was telling the truth, what right did he have to deny his claim? What if Alex or Luke someday asked why Ethan had hidden this? For the first time, his moral compass wasn't just spinning, it was shattering. As Victor's footsteps faded into the night, Ethan sank to the floor. The stranger's warning had been real, and the battle ahead was no longer just legal or physical. It was a war for the very soul of his family. He thought of the boys upstairs, unaware of the storm brewing below, and a terrifying question whispered in his mind. Could love alone shield them from a past designed to destroy them? If you were Ethan, how would you face a man claiming your child by blood while your heart claims them both as your own? As Victor's shocking revelation ignites a war over truth and love, the choices ahead could tear Ethan's family apart. Will you follow him into the next chapter of this relentless storm? The storm had raged for weeks inside Ethan's chest, a relentless war between love and truth. Lawyers had been called, threats exchanged, and Patricia's ghost seemed to linger in every corner of their home, whispering apologies he could never hear. The boys remained blissfully unaware, their world still filled with bedtime stories and soccer games. But Ethan knew that innocence had an expiration date. Victor's claim pressed like a weight on his lungs. A court date loomed, promising to expose secrets and shred whatever fragile peace remained. On the morning of the hearing, Ethan looked at his sons still sleeping, their small hands curled into fists as if fighting dreams only they could see. He realized then what it meant to love someone more than yourself. It meant being willing to break your own heart to save theirs. Instead of going to court, Ethan drove across the city with Alex and Luke buckled in the back seat, their chatter about cartoons a cruel contrast to the silence in his soul. He stopped at a quiet park where Patricia had once taken them for picnics. Victor was waiting, his expensive coat out of place among the rustling leaves and squealing children nearby. For a long moment they stood apart, two men bound by blood and betrayal. Ethan's voice cracked when he finally spoke. "I can't undo the lies, but I can decide how this ends. The boys deserve a life free from war." Victor's expression was unreadable. "So you'll give him to me?" Ethan swallowed hard. "No, I'll give you both of them for weekends, summers, a chance to know who you are. But they stay with me. They need stability, and whether you believe it or not, I've been their father since the first breath they took." For the first time, Victor's mask slipped and something human flickered there. Grief, maybe even respect. He extended his hand. "I didn't come here to destroy them, Ethan. I just wanted the truth." They shook hands like reluctant allies, not enemies. In the months that followed, the arrangement held. The boys laughed louder when Victor visited, unaware of the battlefield their fathers had crossed to protect them. Ethan still woke some nights with tears on his face, mourning the trust he'd lost in Patricia and the innocence Victor's revelation had stolen. But he also learned that families aren't built on unbroken truth. They're forged in forgiveness and sacrifice. Years later, at Alex and Luke's high school graduation, Victor stood beside him, clapping, his eyes glassy with pride. Ethan felt Patricia's absence like a shadow, but also her love in the sunlight on his sons' faces. In that moment, he understood the only thing that ever mattered. Love, messy and flawed, had still won. It hadn't erased the scars, but it had written a future worth living. As the ceremony ended and his sons ran toward him, arms wide, Ethan knew this was the ending Patricia might have hoped for all along. A family bound not by secrets or blood alone, but by the relentless choice to love each other through the storm. How did this story make you feel, and what part stayed with you the most? Comment 100 if you enjoyed the story. Which country are you watching from? Share this video with your friends to spread the message. And thank you for watching Hope Stories.